Hello everyone, and by everyone I mean all you Outer Wilds cultists that wish you could play the game again for the first time. Welcome in. So, I recorded this a few years ago, but I'm just getting around to editing it now. Before we start though, I need to give a few disclaimers. First, if you haven't played Outer Wilds before, stop watching this. This game is too special to spoil it for yourself. Go play it first, then you can come back and watch as many Outer Wilds videos as you want. Second, now this is a big screw up on my part, but I somehow managed to break my translator tool. May have been a bad install, or maybe I messed with config files that I shouldn't have. I'm still not entirely sure. Either way, the translator didn't work. My apologies if this makes you want to yell at your screen. Since then I've gone back and played the game properly and watched countless playthroughs on YouTube, so I know the feeling of screaming internally at the streamer butchering your favorite game. Finally, in another rookie mistake, I lost all the mic audio for these recordings, just completely unusable. I did realize my F-up pretty soon after I finished the game, so to try to salvage it, I immediately watched my footage back and recorded what's essentially a commentary track of my thoughts and what was going through my head at the time I played it. Now that it's been a few years, I'm going to finally stop procrastinating and tackle the absolute mountain of editing it's going to take to cut this down into something watchable. I hope it comes out okay. With all that out of the way, let's get to it. My trip to the Black Hole Experiment building on Ember Twin yielded an amazing discovery. The Nomai had not only managed to invent teleportation, they also managed to invent time travel. As amazing as that was, there was still one problem. It didn't really give me any leads to chase down next. So, the best thing I had to look into next was the towers on Ash Twin. I got in my ship and started to head to Ash Twin when I got distracted by a little something flying in front of the sun. When I zoomed out of my map, I remembered, oh yeah, there's a space station orbiting real close to the sun here, and thought, you know what, let's just go check that out real quick. In and out, then I'll head back to Ash Twin. No problem, right? Yeah, turns out this was just the start of a very, very long sidetrack to try to land on that space station. I don't remember exactly how long I tried this. It was definitely over an hour. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you watch every single attempt at this. It was pretty damn tedious, and I can't imagine anybody really wants to sit through all that. So I think what I'll do is just cut to the highlights, pick the best attempts out of all of these, and some good examples of the various methods I used in my attempts. The first method I attempted was to try to make a slow, deliberate approach following roughly along the same orbit as the station. I figured if I could get close enough to it in a controlled manner, I could stop the ship, get out, and go check out whatever was over there. Problem is orbital mechanics. At this point, I wasn't taking into consideration my speed relative to the sun and how its gravity would affect me, so instead of following in a nice, neat orbit, I just kept getting slingshotted right past the station. After a few tries of trying that, slingshotting around, and eventually flying back into the sun, I decided to take a different approach. I thought, what if instead I stay still and just descend and try to let the station crash into me when it orbits around? Yeah, nope. The sun's gravity is just too strong. That method didn't end up working. I didn't even get close to the station bonking to me. Time for something else. Okay, those last two methods clearly weren't going to work, so I had to change up my thinking and try something new. How about this time if I... Oh, hello, Adelrock. Nice to see you. Let's just, yep. Okay, excuse me. And, alright, we're back. Anyway, what was I saying? What if I combine the previous two approaches? Instead of chasing the station around, I'll orbit in the opposite direction and let the station run into me. That might work, right? Yeah, actually, that was a pretty close pass. I think this one's looking promising. Still slingshotting a bit, but I think we can make this work. Here it comes. Ooh, so close, just a little lower. The slingshotting was starting to become a problem. I kept oscillating between flying way too close to the sun, and as soon as I broke out of that, I was too high over the station. Got really close that time, and it nearly bonked me. The problem was it started to feel like I was going a little too fast around, that even if I did manage to get in the correct course, I was going to slam the station way too hard, but unfortunately when I tried to slow down, the sun's gravity got me yet again. Alright, let's try this again. That was promising, so I think we can do this. Just take it nice and easy, keep the speed in check, and whew, that was very close. Alright, I think we got it. Get down a little closer to the sun, keep the speed under control, the course in the right direction, and... ooh. Can you feel it? We're really just so close. Almost there. Nearly nicked that one. Okay, feeling it this time. We're gonna get it. Looking good, and bonk. That hit me way too fast. I think I might have just died on impact, but either way, the force of the collision sent me hurtling into the sun, so once again, not gonna work. But the thought was there. It was good. Something like this approach could work. The problem was I needed to get my orbit a little more stable and my speed a bit more slow. So how could I do that? Well, there just so happens to be two orbital bodies in a nice stable orbit pretty close to the sun. So the thought is if I autopilot over to the hourglass twins, match the velocity, then I'll be in a nice steady orbit pretty close to the sun going in the exact same direction as the station. Seems pretty easy, right? All I have to do from here is wait for the station to come around the sun and then slowly come in a little bit closer, and I should be going at the perfect speed to intercept it just as it comes around. My first attempt was a little too cautious, and I did end up slingshotting around the sun yet again, but the idea was good. So far, that seemed like, of all the things I tried, this is the most likely to work. So let's autopilot back over to Ash Twin, match that velocity, get the orbit stable, and I think this will work. All right, our orbit's locked and start descending. Problem last time is I went a little bit too late, so this time I want to be closer to the sun as the station's coming around. So far so good. It's closing in. I'm about at the right height, maybe a bit low, but no, a bit too tall. I have to accelerate downward quickly, but hey, I crashed, but I'm not dead yet. If I can just stabilize this, I might be able to pull it off. All right, orbit's locked, and I see an entrance that I can actually lock onto. This is feeling pretty promising. Yes, ship, I can see that the cockpit's damaged, but I can't go outside and fix you. I need to get inside the station. I managed to unbuckle, but the gravity of the sun was pulling me different ways inside the ship, and it was a real struggle to even get to the hatch. When I did get out, it pushed me straight down a little too hard, and I ended up flying straight away from the station and into the sun. So yeah, can you fly there? Yes. Can you get in a stable orbit? Yes. Can you get out of your ship? Yes. Can you fly out of space and into the station from there? No, gravity's just too strong, so I gave up on that idea. Back to Ashtwin. On the next loop, I pretty much headed straight to Ashtwin, and turns out, if you get there early enough, the sand column isn't even started yet, so you can watch it form. While appreciating how pretty that was, I realized this is probably going to take a while for all the sand to drain off, so rather than sit here and watch the equivalent of grass growing, paint drying, I'm just going to fast forward a bit. And yeah, if you wait long enough, some interesting things start getting revealed. The first tower I found was this one that coincidentally looked a lot like the symbol for the sun we had seen elsewhere in the solar system. So I plopped my ship down right on the walkway next to it and got out to investigate further. You're never going to believe this, but you know my door? Broken. From the glass top, I could at least take a look inside, and that appears to be a black hole teleporter, so if I can get there and stand on it, it's going to take me somewhere. The question is, how do I get past the broken door? My best guess? That no, my elevator there, so I need to get into this tower from somewhere down below. After finding the entrance and getting inside the tower, the hallways inside appeared to be completely choked with cacti, so getting around wasn't going to be easy. When I launched my scout into the Nomai elevator, it basically landed right on top of the teleporter pad. And as I was looking around at the room around, making sure that, yeah, this elevator is where I need to go, all of a sudden my surroundings changed. As coincidence would have it, the teleporter activated just after my scout actually got attached, and yeah, it was now 6 kilometers and climbing away from me. I had to wait for the column of falling sand to pass, and once it did, I noticed that it had sucked my ship up in the air towards Ember Twin, which wasn't great, but I could probably get back to it, that's fine. What was more interesting is that my scout happened to be on that station that I was looking through earlier, and when I zoomed in with my signal scope, does that symbol look familiar? Yeah, that's the Nomai teleporter signal. So, if I can get to that teleporter pad inside this building, I can get inside that station. That would have been nice to know before I spent an hour, 2 hours trying to land on it with my ship, but, you know, live and learn. Unfortunately, it appeared that the only way to get to the elevator was to navigate this hallway full of cacti, and that seemed pointy and very painful, and I didn't quite feel like dying yet on this loop, so I figured this isn't going anywhere, I can come back later, let me keep exploring Ashtwin and see what else I can find first. The next tower I came to is actually a set of 2 towers. One of them had a dead Nomai in a spacesuit right outside the entrance with some cacti inside, and what appeared to be a little alcove at the back, while the other one had a scroll wall in it. Both, however, had teleporter pads, so chances are these went to 2 different locations. I went up a spiral staircase, handicap ramp, whatever you want to call it, around one of the towers. And from up here, it became evident that one of the towers was broken and I could fall right inside it, whereas the other one had a glass floor. and a Nomai elevator. At the top of the elevator was a scroll, so I jumped over and picked that up, then remembered, hey wait, this is useless, and dropped it. And then headed over to the next tower down the bridge. The sand hadn't quite drained off enough for me to enter this tower the normal way, but when I went up top to see if I could get a look inside, turns out this one's glass is also broken, so I could hop right in. And even better, this one was full of pine trees, so I could refill my oxygen. I waited for the sand to drain down so I could open the door and realized the giant column of sand was bearing down on me. So I started to head the other direction to get away from it, but then realized maybe that's not the best idea and waited inside. Apparently I wasn't quite under the cover of the ceiling because the sand started to suck me up. But thankfully it didn't suck me all the way outside of the building and shoot me into space. This time I was a little more patient and waited for the sandfall to clear past the next tower and then went inside. When I entered this tower, I got surprised by an emergency scout recall activated alert and kinda got stuck in my tracks trying to figure out what just happened. I shot my scout out, so yeah, my scout had been returned to me, so why did that happen? My scout was on the station before. So I pulled up my map and, hold up, where'd the station go? It was here before, right? I'm not crazy, like, what's going on? And then I thought, oh, the sun's about to go supernova, so it's currently expanding. Maybe the sun expanded so much that it actually engulfed that station because its orbit was too small. And then when I exited my map, I was somewhere completely different. Again, apparently the teleporter pad had activated while I wasn't looking, and yeah, I was on Brittle Hollow. So I tried to jump off the teleporter pad and explore my new surroundings, but turns out I'm upside down. Gravity may not have been on my side, but at least I landed somewhere that didn't immediately kill me, and I was in a brand new place to explore. My ship log would later inform me that this was the Hanging City. Just like the buried city on Ember Twin, it was also divided vertically into 4 districts. It appeared to be on the other side of the bridge near Church's camp, so if I needed to come back here, that would be my best way to get here. To get between the different districts, the Nomai built a vertical walkway using gravity crystal paths, but unfortunately the way to the very top, where the teleporter that I had just come from was collapsed and blocked off. So instead I headed back down to a lower level. Just like I did on Buried City, I wanted to approach exploring this place very methodically, so I decided to start all the way down on level 1. Across this bridge was a Nomai residential area, which appeared to be filled with housing, meeting spaces, and various courtyards. Because of the deterioration over time, and the fact that this place was just completely coated in ghost matter, Finding my way around this place was a bit of a maze. Overall, most of it wasn't terribly interesting until I got to this space, which had a courtyard with a large tree in it. At the top of the stairs, I found a room which had a bunch of desks arranged facing a text wall at the front, and seated at those desks were a bunch of tiny Nomai skeletons. Using context clues, I was able to determine that this was a Nomai school, and unfortunately, all these children died in the middle of class. So once again, that complicated my theories on how the hell did all these Nomai die at the exact same time. While I couldn't actually read the scrolls, I did notice one interesting detail. The writing here appeared to be much larger and messy than the other Nomai writing I had seen in other places, so it presumed that this was children's handwriting. Though, to be fair, if archaeologists thousands of years in the future were to ever see my handwriting, they would also presume it was children's handwriting, so who am I to judge? Ready to leave, I hopped off and started to head back over the bridge when a piece of brittle hollow fell and almost crushed me to death. And as I was looking out at the gigantic red sun, I noticed a meteor hurtling towards me, and as I was tracking its path, I slipped off the bridge and fell right into the black hole. Well, the loop's pretty much over, so there's not really a point in going through the white hole and back to brittle hollow, so I think I'll just meditate and end my loop here. While I didn't get to finish exploring on that loop, the Hanging City did seem kind of interesting, so I wanted to head back to Brittle Hollow to check it out. Since it seemed like a real pain in the ass to go all the way back to Ashwin, go through that teleporter, then fall off the ceiling and hope I didn't die to get to the Hanging City, I knew there was a bridge that led there from Chert's camp. And also, it seemed like a real pain in the ass to find a place on the surface, park my ship, head all the way to Chert's camp, and then walk over. So instead, what I decided to do was just find a hole in Brittle Hollow and fly my ship right into it. Once I was inside the planet, the only challenge was fighting the black hole's massive amount of gravity to get someplace where I could park my ship. It didn't take too long to find the bridge to the Hanging City, so I flew up to it and then parked my ship right at the entrance. As luck would have it, this spit me out on level 2, which was the exact level that I was looking to explore anyway, so I continued on down the path to see what I could find. The first path I found to the right led to a room with a switch on the wall that was activated by moving the glowy ball inside. When I activated it, this massive structure on rails below began to rise up towards the top of the building. My ship log would later inform me that this was called the Black Hole Forge. It appeared that if I could get back up to the top level of this place, I could use the gravity crystal paths to navigate my way over to the entrance to that structure and get inside somehow. Continuing down the path, I found some more Nomai buildings with a waterfall nearby and 3 text walls down below. The text walls were, of course, useless to me since I can't translate, so instead I continued to explore the buildings to see what I could find. There were a couple of scrolls to pick up, but at this point I was kind of losing hope that I would ever be able to figure out how to translate, so I didn't even bother picking them up. And just kind of walked around, looked at the various Nomai skeletons and architecture, whatnot. It seemed cool, but didn't really tell me anything instructive. Then, at the very top of this place, I did find something that was of note. A switch on the wall let me activate a Nomai elevator, and when I took it all the way to the top, I emerged into an area that had a bunch of ice and a melting waterfall. When I followed the waterfall all the way up towards the top, it led to a hole in the surface, which led me out to the North Pole. And just like on Ember Twin, this was another handy shortcut to get into the Hanging City. I wasn't done exploring the city, however, so I fell back down into the hole, switched the elevator to the down configuration, and went back to where I had came from. Next up on the agenda was to check out level 3, so I went to the Nomai walkway and made my way up there. This space appeared to be some type of Nomai apartment complex or something like that. Much like the place on Ember Twin I had found, it was completely covered in dead Nomai skeletons pretty much everywhere. That some were sleeping in beds, some sitting at tables. So again, it appeared that everyone died at the exact same time wherever they were. And since I was in this space, I think this is a good time to reflect on what we learned about the Nomai so far. We know that they had a ship called the Vessel, and that they received a signal from the Big Bang and followed it here to the star system. Once they got here, they got ensnared by Dark Bramble and had to escape using their escape pods. One escape pod made it to Brittle Hollow, one escape pod went to Ember Twin, and the other escape pod got stuck in Dark Bramble. For the escape pods that managed to get out of Dark Bramble, the surviving Nomai had to make settlements in the planets they now found themselves stranded on. But since we can find Nomai buildings and writing and other archaeological finds on other planets, the Nomai eventually found a way off their planet and colonized the rest of the solar system. Despite their setbacks, the Nomai still seem to have reverence for the Big Bang and continued their search for the birthplace of the universe. In doing so, they had to create several different amazing technologies. The Nomai learned how to harness the power of black and white holes to create not only teleportation, but also some sort of time travel. The Nomai had mastery over gravity, forming gravity crystals to stick to walls and other things, and also built giant cannons that could hurl objects and shuttles into space. The biggest of which was the massive orbital probe cannon that was orbiting around Giant's Deep that sent a probe out to do something. They also built locator devices on various planets throughout the solar system that could track the various planets by their signal or orbit, and even managed to build a device to track the quantum moon. Eventually, the Nomai got killed by something, which seemed to happen suddenly everywhere throughout the star system. After leaving the Nomai apartments, the only place left to go was up to the 4th floor, but again, the gravity crystal walkways had the path blocked off, so there was no way to just walk up to that level. Since I had accidentally teleported to here, it didn't take me too long to figure out the proper way to get there was probably to come here, raise up that black hole forge, then go to Ash Twin, go to the teleporter, and teleport your way up. But that seemed like a lot of work to me, and I was feeling kind of lazy at the time, so I decided, fuck it, I'm just going to try to fly my ship over there, and maybe that'll work out. Seems a hell of a lot easier than going through that whole rigmarole I just described. Okay, it seems like the devs might have planned for this shortcut, and it's a bit hard to squeeze my ship through these gaps, but maybe it'll work? Let's try coming in from below. Looks like a tight squeeze, but I think I can make it. Oh yeah, this is coming together. Now just nice and easy, gotta flip the ship, and boom, shortcut. Now that I was up here, I was able to follow the gravity crystal path over and explore this building. If the Nomai had built a structure this close to a black hole, it must be something important, right? But what could it possibly do? When I entered the black hole forge, it was suspended vertically directly over the black hole and used various gravity crystals and elevators to keep me oriented properly. Inside there were scrolls, dead Nomai skeletons, and a lore wall, but those things weren't terribly interesting. However, what was interesting is over on this wall there was a spinning diagram with a glowing blue beam that appeared to point to a planet with a star in the middle. My ship log informed me that this was a diagram depicting the alignment angle between a warp tower and its corresponding astral body. When the warp tower aligned with the planet, the entire structure briefly glowed blue to indicate that this is when the teleport window would open. I also found an Ash Twin projection stone on this table, but didn't immediately find a place to put it. The most interesting thing I found, however, were these bins full of mechanical components. By looking at the mechanical components, it appeared that they were parts of the warp cores I had seen in various places, in the teleporter pads and the black hole experiment building over on Ember Twin. So perhaps this is where the Nomai were building warp cores. Makes sense, right? Black hole forge, they were building something. And then, looking up at the structure just past the Nomai statue, I saw what looked like sockets for warp cores, one with a white diamond on it and the other with a black diamond. Wires fed into these to other sockets where it looked like one of these assembled warp cores was already inserted on one side and then an empty socket on the other. From this I can infer the way this black hole forge probably worked is that the Nomai would put empty warp cores into those sockets. Then the Nomai would lower the black hole forge down towards the black hole, where a tiny bit of the black hole would be siphoned off into a black hole warp core. Not exactly sure how this next part works, but if I had to guess, because of the conservation of energy when a little bit of that black hole is siphoned off, it also siphons off a bit of that white hole that's way out in space. And that's what makes the white hole core. So cool. Yeah, this is where the Nomai made their warp cores. Awesome. Not sure what that tells me, but it's interesting. Once I exited the black hole forge, I took the Ash Twin projection stone and inserted into the wall, hoping maybe this time it'll work. It didn't. And then plugged it into the projection pool as well. This one did work, but it just showed me the same vision I'd seen plenty of times before. All these glowy masks inside a rotating structure with stars, something beyond it. Still wasn't quite sure what to make of this just yet, but this revelation would come pretty soon. Continuing down the gravity crystal path, I came to a building, and when I entered it, I got flipped around right side up and could see the parts of the Nomai vertical walkway that were broken and a Nomai elevator that was leading up. This Nomai elevator just led to a building on the North Pole that I had already been to previously. So it appeared that my exploration of the Hanging City had come to an end. And while that was a fun detour and all, and I learned some cool things, it was interesting to see where the Nomai lived in Brittle Hollow. It was cool to see that the Nomai could actually manufacture their warp cores and how they did so. But it didn't really give me too much more to go on story-wise or any leads to chase down. So while that was a fun diversion, on the next loop it's probably best to go back to Ashtwin and keep checking out those warp towers.